Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Seen Differently, the podcast with me, Thomas Voigt. I'm very excited to have Juliette today with us. Juliette, welcome to Seen Differently, the podcast. I'm very excited that you could join this first episode. But before we go and introduce you further, I would like to tell our listeners and viewers a little bit more about how I just came up with this podcast idea. So at the time of this recording, it's July 2026. So that means half of the year of 2026 is done. And I personally worked quite a bit on a few consulting gigs over the last couple of months. And I felt like now in July is generally a natural time to pause and to reflect. And I thought, why not just creating a podcast and just inviting amazing guests who potentially could discuss with me how we could see things differently. For many of us, 2026 has been a little bit of a grind, let's put it that way. You know, in particular with clients that I work with in post-sales and revenue jobs. And I discovered that most of the problems that we really saw were just trying to be in this tunnel of working more, working harder, implementing AI, bringing the teams together, just, grinding through. And frankly, I quite feel exhausted, and I see people are exhausted. And this is why I said, well, let's just pause. And holiday season is upon us, people going away. And I thought, what about if we just could speak to our listeners or our viewers who are potentially somewhere nice and who do have the opportunity now to reflect, to unwind, and show them how they maybe see or could see things differently when they go back into their jobs, into their homes, into their normal environment. And this is the origin story of Seen Differently and why we come together. And I have to say, I instantly thought about you, Juliette, because, well, Juliette, we know each other for a couple of years now. We work together at GWI. You were a research manager and a research director. You were serving clients with insights, with a lot of data to understand their market and their audience much better. And you love to be with clients. So you come from a client-facing role as well, and you know how it works, to super serve your clients. On the other side, you also run your tarot business now for 5 years. You're based in London. You're originally from France, and you do these tarot sessions, French and in English. And what I find interesting is you are using tarot as a tool of coaching. You have been certified at Cambridge last year, so you're a certified coach, and you're now studying and understanding even deeper how tarot, reading tarot cards, can be a part of coaching to really get unstuck. And I'm assuming if people are unstuck at the moment, what they will get out of this episode is to not really think harder through problems, to just relax, get a new tool, and just listen to your wonderful voice and how you're going to explain how it all works. So with no further ado, Juliette, welcome to this episode of Seen Differently.
Thank you so much, Thomas, and thank you for this lovely introduction. Welcome, everyone.
Amazing. Juliette, I would love to start a little bit with our story and with your story. So researcher, working with hard numbers and coaching and tarot, these seem to me two words for me. Could you just explain this a little bit more of how you live your two lives, so to say?
Yeah, of course. That's one that often surprises people, that I'm so data, number, fact driven, and that on the side I have a little tarot-based coaching business. From my perspective, it actually makes sense. So during the day, I'm working with companies They come with me with questions, objectives. I help them clarify what are the objectives. And then I dig into data. I build a story to help them, empower them to make their decision next. With coaching, I have individuals that come to me with questions, with objectives. I help them clarify their questions, their objectives. Then we pull the cards. I look into the data and I create a story that empowers them and think and reflect on how they can best do their next move. So as far as I'm concerned, tarot and building insights are actually very similar. And I think that has been like the big connection for me.
Yes, absolutely. I remember when we met at GWI, you were offering a kind of a trial tarot session, like a quick spread, basically. And I found this very interesting. And since then, we basically work together. I'm your client. And tell me a little bit about your clientele, your clients. I just mentioned before, I sense like people are a bit stuck in everything. They are tired.
Mhm.
What are the problems or what are the situations that you face when people come to you and want help?
So very often it's people that indeed are a little bit stuck and or they feel a little bit overwhelmed or not sure how to approach their next move. It's worth saying that in the way I approach tarot, I don't tell the future. So I'm very much using the cards as a visual frame and visual reflective frame. So people ask questions, we define the question together, and then they pick cards, and each card is matching a placement and one theme related to what they are navigating. So for instance, one thing that I really like to do is one card is going to represent what to focus on first, let's say on the next month. And another card's going to be, okay, what might hold you back from doing that? Another card might be, what are the resources available? Another card might be, okay, how can you step out of your comfort zone? And then for each card, I kind of like guide the person through the symbols associated with this card, the placement. And so I give a little bit of a prompt, let's say. And then from there, the person think about what this card means for them, how it translates into what they are facing in their lives. And so very often what's happening is, let's be honest, we have so many information in the day to day, and even working in market research myself, managing people, projects, and so on. Sometimes you just finish your day, you finish your week, you went through so many interaction, information. It's just very hard to filter through what to prioritize, what to focus on. And so having this visual reflective prompt, it just helps you to take things one thing at the time, breathe, stop, reflect. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's mainly people that are feeling a bit stuck or a bit overwhelmed that are coming to me.
great. Amazing. I would like to deep dive a little bit more into the art of tarot, and not only the art, but the science, because you decided actually to research tarot and coaching as a methodology to help people to get unstuck together. So what brought you to this idea to just go even deeper and do some research? And if you can, what are your first findings? So what do you find here from a research perspective?
Hmm. Great question. So I think when it comes to combining tarot and coaching, um, through my work, I have been using coaching for a little while, just to help more junior person to develop their skills, to develop their confidence. For instance, a big part of my role can be around public speaking. So I've been coaching people on public speaking, just to name one of the few things I've been focusing on. And so when I started doing the tarot readings, it just made sense. I just realized doing it that it really helps people, that it has great value. And then when I started learning a little bit more about coaching, I just realized that tarot was actually fitting into quite a few boxes that are coaching. Difference being that tarot existed for much longer than coaching. I think the first proper research naming coaching for what it is are about 30 years old. Um, the Tarot of Marseille has been created in the 15th century. So I think it also gives you a taste that actually humans always have been using tools to facilitate conversation, to facilitate exploring what they are going through different lenses.
Mm.
So then when I started researching coaching, I just saw that there were fairly little research on tarot. That's mainly due to the fact that it's associated with witchcraft because it's fortune telling as well. And that this is two areas that are heavily stigmatized, unfortunately. So it's not a linear way of thinking. So it has been excluded from traditional academic research for a long time.
Yeah. You mentioned one point, which is like witchcraft and fortune telling and these things. And I'm assuming some of our listeners, they might just think, well, Thomas is talking about tarot and coaching. That can't be right. I mean, yes, the name is seen differently, but I would love to understand go a little bit deeper. Explain us a little bit more. What is tarot? So if it's not fortune telling, what is it more of?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question. I think to answer this question, it's worth um, explaining the context in which I'm reading tarot,
Sure.
which is a lot of it is working in corporate settings and environment, using it as a coaching tool and so on. So the way I introduce the cards, and that's my take on it, it's printed cards. There is nothing more than printed cards here. So we can all chill down. There is no spirits that's going to come around or anything. And also there is a thing that when I started reading tarot, when I started professionally, I was very conscious of the power dynamic it could create. That because the cards design are so relatable. It has been designed by a very nice and smart lady, Mrs. Pamela Smith. And there have been a lot of research in terms of philosophy, human nature, human life circles, and so on. So the cards are very powerful to make you deeply reflect on what you're going through. And so I was conscious that when people hear someone saying like, oh, this card is associated with this and that, it can really feel like the person can read through you. And I didn't find this power dynamic. I wanted people to leave the room not thinking, oh my God, she's so amazing. How did she know all this? I wanted people to leave the room thinking, I feel so much lighter and I feel like I have my own keys to know what's next. So in order to make that happen, I just made sure that in my approach, I'm being very down to earth, grounded. This is in your hands. I'm also not saying anything about the future. This is just to avoid self-fulfilling prophecy that if I tell you you're going to have a great day, you're going to have a great day. If I tell you you're going to have an awful one, well, I might jinx you there a little bit. But that being said, I think it's also very important to acknowledge and recognize that if today I can be working with tool like tarot, it's because there have been populations that have been transmitting the knowledge of fortune telling, the knowledge of like this storytelling that helps people to think about what they are going through and so on. And it's also very important to acknowledge that if today, when we hear about tarot, um, it might be something that might come across as a little bit laughable or not very, very serious, is because it comes from a very long legacy of stigmatization and persecution. So if anyone is interested about that, it would take a whole new podcast to just talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, but I found the book from Silvia Federici, Caliban and the Witch, very interesting to understand the building and the construction of the myth of the witch in Europe specifically. And I think it helps to understand a little bit of these stigmas. And there is also an amazing article that you can find online from Laura Cohen around the Romanese population, how they carried the legacy of tarot and fortune telling when it has been heavily persecuted in Europe, and how they have been stigmatized, persecuted because of this. And most of what we think about tarot today negatively is associated with stereotypes against this population. So I think it's very important to remind that, and also to acknowledge where it comes
Yeah.
from and this.
Yeah. So I'm imagining at the moment somebody's listening to you and say like, okay, great. I love it. So I understand it's not only woo woo. It could potentially help me. So, but talk me actually through if I would be interested to have a tarot reading, right? And I would, you kind of hook me in now. How would this actually work? So tell me, what does the normal or classic tarot reading session look like?
Hmm. Well, if you want to, we can do a little live test later on.
I
Uh,
would love that.
but basically, the way it would work is first we sit down and we see why you are here. And here I'm going to have some clients that's going to be like, oh, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. I'm not sure what to ask. I'm going to have some clients that have questions straight on that sometimes needs a little bit of clarifying because once again, in my practice, I don't tell the future. Sometimes I have people that they don't really want to talk and they're just like, oh, nothing in particular. Just tell me what the cards say. And it starts from there.
Oh, that's interesting. Hold on. What do you mean they don't want to talk? Because if you think about coaching, for example, right? Coaching as such, if you think about it, my coach would ask me a lot of questions. So I'm actually forced to talk. When people come to you and they say like they don't want to talk. So how does that then work? How does, how you dealing with these kind of clients?
Hmm. So I think that's one of the interesting things I'm researching about tarot as a coaching tool. When we think about mental well-being or mental health, historically, starting with Freud, it has been this approach of you need to make the person talk.
Hmm.
This is what you do. That's an approach that works very well for many people. But when I started my tarot practice, I've been surprised to see lots of people coming to me that actually they don't like to talk. It can be, for instance, some people that are neurodivergent. So they are not necessarily comfortable just articulating what they're going through or these kind of things. So it kind of like makes it easier and more accessible for them to self-reflect without having to first reveal everything about themselves. I've been surprised to see when I started that half of my clients are men. Uh, I'm not gonna lie, when I started, I was expecting to have like plenty of women coming around. And in the end, I think half of my clients are men. And one thing I realized is that men don't necessarily feel comfortable to speak about themselves. They haven't necessarily been as socialized to verbalize what they're going through. And it can be cultural as well. Like I just have people for whom going to see someone to speak about yourself is a little bit awkward. So they just appreciate being able to sit down and then having cards pulled out. And then when I explain the meaning of the cards, they can decide to talk about it or not. Like this is their choice. Um, but overall, yeah, I feel like tarot, it brings something new to the table in that sense that is not framed around making the person talk. It can bring interaction. It definitely brings self-reflection. Um, but it's everyone's choices. And I think that then by default, it makes it a tool that is a little bit more inclusive.
Mhm.
Because you have to assume that people have been socialized to talk about themselves. They are comfortable sharing their emotions, articulating their emotions, and so on, to make coaching work, basically.
Yeah. This is so interesting. And for me, it sounds almost like an opportunity for folks who potentially are introvert or, as you said, who don't like to really talk about things or who potentially haven't thought about their current situation and
Mm.
are able to articulate what really is there. Because what we really see is people just are stuck and they believe they're stuck in a work environment, right? For example. But I believe what you could potentially find out is through tarot readings and your sessions is to define, it's the cause of frustration is often not the work environment.
Mm.
Can you speak a little bit about this topic?
Very often people come to see me to talk about their career. And then because the cards they are very generic, like they relate to emotions, moments in life that are a little bit more universal. Um, very often we go through the reading and then they pause and they're like, could it apply to things outside of work as well?
Mhm.
I'm like, could it? What do you think? And yeah, it's very often that when you feel overwhelmed at work, you feel overwhelmed at home, and it might be that if there is a pattern that, for instance, at work you're overwhelmed because you struggle a little bit to ask for help, or you feel like you have to prove yourself, so you have to carry everything on your own shoulders and so on. It's kind of likely that you tend to have the same behaviors in your personal life. And so it might be that in your personal life, you might have a feeling that no one's helping you and so on. So it's always interesting to see the transversal elements. In the research I do on tarot, I'm really trying to research tarot under the hat of Gestalt coaching. So Gestalt coaching is coming from Gestalt psychology, which is an approach that is considering the human as whole. Uh, One might always struggle to define Gestalt because it's a German word. Maybe how would you define Gestalt?
Gestalt, I think building something. Gestalten means something to build or to create something,
Mm.
It's a very productive part. Gestalt means, just take your building blocks and just create something. I think this is what I would, how I would describe the word Gestalt.
Okay, I love this because this is the first time I get a German person to explain this to me. And it's exactly what it is. It completely makes sense because Gestalt, it's an approach that invites us, instead of looking at different parts of ourselves, to just acknowledge that we are whole.
Oh,
So
okay.
we are not one person at work, one person with our friends, one person with our family. We are one person. The context and the fact that we always respond to external environment may bring different aspects of ourselves in different environment, but we are one whole person. And I think what the tarot does in that sense, because the visuals, also like visuals prompting, really helps speaking with the subconscious as well and so on. It helps people to acknowledge where they stand as a whole and not be like, okay, so for work, I'm this person and then flipping mask.
Yeah. Amazing. Um, I felt like I slightly interrupted you when I was asking you, tell me how this session is, because I got a bit sidetracked by your comment where you said like, oh, sometimes people come to me that they don't like to talk. So I would like to go back to that. When they come to you and maybe they don't want to talk, how's this session normally looking like? So if you come and we have a session, how could I imagine doing that?
Mm. So I really guide the person step by step. And so just to recap, first thing first, while you hear we talk about it or we don't talk about it, for me, it's the person is leading the session. I'm not. And this is very important for the person to keep the agency. Then, based on what the person wants, I'm going to organize different spread. So a spread is a framework of cards.
Mhm.
If someone wants to know what to do next, it's going to be a little bit more, okay, what do you have? What you should focus on? If someone comes and feels a little bit overwhelmed and have everything at the same time in their life, then it's going to be more a spread that is a mapping of what's going on to clarify, breathe, and take one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Um, and so after that, I usually like starting the session with a 1 minute guided meditation. Once this is clarified, just for the person to arrive, land in the space. You're not jumping to your next task. You're here in this moment for you. Then I guide the person to pick cards. And once the person pick a card, I put it in a specific placement. And then I reveal the card one after each. I tell to the person where the cards stand, what it means, and then I explain to the person the symbolics. And this is as easy as it is. I explain the symbolics. This is where it stands. And this is enough for the person to start thinking about, oh, what does it mean for me? Oh, I have this going on, or maybe it could be about that. And it's basically just helps people to step out from their own narrative, which can be limiting sometimes, even most of the time our own narrative, they are quite helpful. Um, but it really helps people to stand out from that a little bit and just to look at the situation anchored in the present and with a different lens and navigate all this, reshape their story, let go of what is not helping them, anchor what is helping them. Sometimes what is interesting is to see people that they arrive and they kind of like gaslighting themselves. They're like, oh, I should be doing that. I'm lazy, or um, why am I stuck here? And then you look at the cards and you're like, oh, do you want to do it? And then they're like, yeah, no, actually, I hate it. I don't want to do it. It's just to please this person, or it's just because the way I'm going to look that I want to do it. And it's a massive relief then to anchor your own self and be like, no, actually, I don't care about that. And that's okay.
Mm. Yeah. You know, if for me, I mean, you sold me on that, because when I started working with you, I think what I loved about the way of how you take your clients through is you really do take care. And what I loved and learned from you are the principles of customer success that I actually can use and give away to my clients, because you're super, super focused, without meaning you are telling your clients what they need to do. I think you guide the client. You are always a little bit a step off ahead of where I am, but you get me. You sense my well-being and the state that I'm in, and you guide me through these cards. And I feel very much like very whole and very, very much guided throughout this process. It's my personal experience that I found. And I also have to say, I don't know how you do it. And I don't only think it's the card, but my brain almost kind of clicks effortless into the next steps that you mentioned. So I get new ideas and I thought like, oh, wow. And things really get easier, unfold, and I get unstuck. I definitely get a new perspective when I work with you. So that's my personal experience that I'm happy to share with all that.
I
If
love this. When you asked me how the session worked, I was actually quite interested to hear from your perspective, having received the tarot coaching. How was the experience? And especially, what did you think before the session, before the first session?
Mm.
Because you didn't know what to expect during and after.
I think this has changed over time. At the beginning, I was really like, oh, tarot reading, let's do it. It's a bit like, oh, I will get out and have clarity in terms of I know exactly what the future will hold. So, for example, I know I'm going to land this consulting gig, yes or no, very specific. And I learned over the time that that is not what you get out of tarot reading. What I learned is mostly to learn about my blockers,
Mm.
get a reconfirmation of what I sensed and knew before, um, knowing that I need to work with me, my preferences, for example, how I approach things, and how I go about things. I think at the end of the day, you're almost guardrailing me back into how I work, ideally with myself, and how I work with my environment.
Mm.
So you basically, tarot reading is for me to just get things in order, in
Mm.
line with me. So these days, I see tarot reading as just, as I said, getting clearance. And our last reading was a couple of weeks ago. I remember that. And we were talking about what's, what what are basically, what shall I do to drive my business forward? And I think a couple of interesting things came up. And one was a card that I pulled, which was basically saying like, you need to move things forward and you need to play and get things out. Well, here we are. Now I set up a podcast, Seen Differently, and I just try and see, how it works, for example. So
Mm,
so that brought me back to go out, connect, build something,
mm,
fail, learn. And this is what I always get out of this. In the bigger scheme, it's how I should go about things, how I should see my business, how I should go about my teams, for example. If I think about, our listeners, are there any other ways for me to naturally go about my leadership? Should I really sometimes pull myself back because I'm too much in their face? Do I want too much of my team?
yeah.
Do I need to allow times where I just need to pause more? Like the times that I mentioned before, right? These actual times. I mean, what living is hard at the moment. There's a lot of pressure. So pulling myself out and making sure I learn from my own behavior is so essential. So this is what I think mostly get out of our readings, and this is why I think one of your best clients, I believe.
Absolutely.
Right.
Um, that's very interesting because you mentioned two things that really clicked. Um, I think the first one that you mentioned is that it's easy, isn't it? That when you arrive, like you being cared through the process. Um, I think that's one of the things that really got me into tarot at the beginning. It's worth noting that I'm using tarot for myself as well to like stop, reflect, and so on. Um, and I only knew work on the self that is hard work. So therapy, coaching, learning, and I feel like in our lives, and especially as leaders, we're just into performance mode about everything. So we have to do, I don't know how many steps a day. We need to go to the gym. We need to go to the counselor. We need to go to the coach. We need to reach the KPIs, and we need to go to yoga as well. And we finish the day and we're like, oh, I did everything to be happy. Why am I so overwhelmed right now? Um, and the thing that I like about tarot is that it feels like a treat. It feels
Mm,
like a treat, like it's like going to a massage or something, but for the brain, because this is not as painful as other approach may be. And for me, like painful is sometimes necessary, definitely, but not always. And I kind of really liked having a tool that can make life easier when everything is already so complicated. So that's one of the first thing. And the second thing is you mentioned your experience from the perspective of a leader. And so when I have projects super high intensity, high pace, and I know I'm at risk as a leader to be so focused on the timelines, the resource constraint, and so on, that I am risking not being a great leader for people reporting into me or working on my project. I make sure I always do a little reading before starting the day or the evening before, just because it helps me to, as you say, prioritize and to be like,
mm,
okay, priority, the one thing I'm going to regret at the end of the project, it's if I'm being a person to others that I don't want to be. So I'm going to watch out for that.
mm,
'Cause that's something that you kind of like tend to forget about when you're into survival urgency mode.
mm. Yes. Coming back to the first one, actually, which I liked, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with a friend. Tarot sometimes really feels for me like a spa treatment for your mind because you literally just go.
Yeah.
And we were thinking like, how cool would it be to just go on your lunch break and have a tarot session, just to get out of the grind for a moment, and just let have this kind of conversation or just absorbing things. And also, I want to mention, I love tarot because it reminds me also of another technique that I use, which is mindscaping or mindscape. And I learned mindscaping from the amazing teacher, Dale Fox in South Africa, and her wife in it. And it's quite similar, where you basically just go into an alpha stage. It's a very relaxed way of, being, and just follow your thoughts and your processes. And I think having these tools by your side whenever, as a spa treatment in your lunch break, or as you said before, you see clients, or if you want to envision something, how you want to show up before a big meeting, before team meeting or whatever, or understanding why you procrastinate as a leader, then I think these tools are just amazing. So yeah, these are just my 2 cents again about this. But if you don't mind, and you mentioned that before, Juliette, I would love to take you up for a quick reading, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So we can see live how this is actually working.
Yes, please.
We can do a very quick one for today, maybe just 2 cards, just to have a little taster on what it is, how it looks like.
Yes, I love that. And
Yeah,
I think everyone would actually now hopefully get a sense of how a tarot reading could potentially look like. As I know, it's just, 2 cards, but it's a sense of, a little bit of a sprinkle to get an idea of how it actually how it would be to work with you.
absolutely. Um, I was thinking, would you like to also do the little meditation in case people listening to it want to enjoy a meditation? Or,
Sure.
yeah, that's going to be like the whole spy experience just listening to the podcast. All right, amazing. So when you feel ready, you're going to close your eyes, and I'm going to close my eyes with you. And first, you're just going to take a long inhale through the nose and a long exhale through the mouth. And you're just going to take a moment to observe the different areas of contact between your body and your chair, the ground beneath you. And just take a time to observe different areas of contact where you feel the gravity. Observe different sensation of pressure. Overall, just take a moment to observe the gravity beneath you and feel the force from the earth dragging you towards it. Now you're going to visualize a little string that starts on the top of your head and that is going towards the ceiling. And very gently, this little string is going to pull you towards the ceiling. So you're going to feel yourself lengthening. You're going to visualize more air between each little bones of your spine. And as you're doing so, make sure you don't have any tension in your shoulders, in your neck. So the air, the oxygen can circulate freely. Now you're going to visualize a circle around yourself. This circle is going to represent your space for the next 5 minutes. And you're going to be conscious that for the next 5 minutes, there is nothing from outside that's going to come within this circle. And there is nothing from within this circle that needs to go outside. It's just you in the moment, in the present. You're also going to be conscious that anything that happened before these 5 minutes, it belongs to the past. Its memories is not here with you in the circle, so it stays out. And anything that may happen after these 5 minutes, it's in the future, it's not here yet, it's just speculation. So it stays out from this circle. Now you're just going to take a moment and think about what is the question you want to ask to the cards today. You may have a clear question coming in mind, or maybe not. That's okay. Just try to put your focus and your attention on that. As you are doing so, just try to observe your internal weather as you think about that. So how does it feel inside? Maybe it feels warm, maybe cold, maybe neutral, sunny, windy, rainy. Try to not judge, just observe, just connect to it without trying to change anything. When you feel ready, you're going to take a long inhale through the nose, long exhale through the mouth. And in your own time, you're going to blink your eyes open and we're going to start with the reading. How do you feel?
I feel very centered, very calm. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm going to ask you to stay in this space for the next 5 minutes then. And so here you have the cards. I'm going to move my fingers through. When you feel ready, you say stop.
Stop.
Perfect. So we have our first card. And we're going to do that one more time. When you feel ready.
Stop.
Amazing. So, can you tell me the question you wanted to ask to the cards?
Yeah, I was thinking because this is one of the first episodes of my new venture, the podcast. I was thinking, what should I need to reflect on if I think about the future of this podcast? What are the things that I need to consider to continue doing this? Because like last year, I started a podcast as well, and I finished it after 2 episodes because I thought like, it's maybe not for me.
Yeah.
But I realized I started again. Now we are recording. So I wanted to understand, is there more that I need to understand about me on why I do this, why I like to do this,
Yeah.
or what hold me potentially back in the first instance?
Mm, interesting. All right. So let's see what these two cards are inviting you to reflect on. So the first one that you see here is the Knight of Pentacles. This card is associated with what to focus on and what to reflect on for the future of the podcast. Pentacles is element of earth. So this is associated with stability, security. For some people, it might be health. Some people, it might be family, community. It's represented in the tarot with the coins because more broadly for a lot of people, security is associated with incomes as well, career. And so the knight is kind of a young figure. So it's a figure that has a lot of energy, that is very ambitious, and that really gets its energy from that. So when it comes to your question around the podcast, the card that came up is very much associated with matching an ambition, having ideas in your head and really wanting to, for your ideas to bring you from A to B. So the motivation from the podcast, it may be about having some sort of impact, some sort of a change, but not something linear or flat. It has to be something that goes up. Anything that you want to share or say about this?
No, I mean, I'm very happy about that to hear this. But as you could see,
Yeah.
I think it speaks about itself. It gives me a lot of energy.
Mm.
to share my ideas, to reflect on what I have experienced, in particular with this podcast and the name Seen Differently that came up through a friend,
Mm.
and I think is ever so great picked because I would love to share how I navigated through, you know, these blockers of moving through careers
Yeah.
and feeling a bit safer and a bit more relaxed in a year like 2026, and sharing this with others through a format and a media like podcast, I think works very, very well. And it's a great way of doing it. And if I can do this, and if I have even one listener who just walks out of this and feels like, oh, wow, that's great. I love the story that Thomas was telling me here, then this is what I wanted to achieve. And this is, very simply why it makes me happy to run this.
Mm. Love that. Amazing. So this card is kind of like you focus on like what is helping you for this podcast. The next card is internal blockers. So what might hold you back, little voice on the back of your head that is not your friend. Interesting. So you got the 7 of Wands. Wands is element of fire. So it's associated with energy, drive, passion. And as you can see, this person here is kind of like fighting back against something. So here, this card, it can be associated with defending your territory. It can be associated with competition, comparing yourself to others, and these kind of things. And so this is a little voice in your head that is holding you back from fully doing that. Any comments or no
Oh
comment?
my God, yeah. It sounds like almost like a no-brainer, but this is what I personally now feel. This is the power of tarot reading, I think, demonstrated in a very little time frame, which is basically it showcases you a card that I instantly understand.
Mm,
You know what? Of course, this is one of the first episodes I record, and I wasn't procrastinated, but I was pushing myself out doing it. But in my head, there are these little voices that are like, you're not going to be good enough. It's not going to be nice. What has that to do with customer success and leadership? All these kind of things. But I thought, like, you know what? I just give it a try anyway, because these two sides are in me. I love to build businesses with my clients. On the other side, I think the biggest lever is to make sure we as leaders listen to ourselves, look after ourselves, and just start here with us and our behavior.
yeah.
And nevertheless, I have a lot of self-doubts, as anybody else would have. And I think this is that, but I'm going to go through it. And I love this. And I think it's going to be much stronger in May to just recognize the blockers, the voices, and just continue, or, you know, feeling directed by the feedback that I will get and that are meaningful actually to me. And I mean, I don't mean the inner voice, but really folks who do understand what I want to do here, and who are here to help me seriously. So,
Mm.
yeah.
It's very interesting hearing you reflecting back on what just happened, because it sounds like you have like lots of things going on, lots of excitement around this podcast, doubts about it as well, of course. And that with Q image, it just helps to narrow it and be like, okay, let's get it done, basically.
Yes, yes. And I think this in connection with our last reading where you said like, hey, you get out, do things and so
Mm.
on. This really helps me also to control a little bit my inner voices. In another podcast I was talking about, and I actually have a name for it, it's TED. TED is the big inner voice, that's always there. And we often feel like we just don't face things because we're too afraid of changing things or discovering something. Um, so I love TED, but sometimes TED is a little bit too noisy and you just need to do things. And this is a great way of connecting with that. Thank you. That was a great example, and I hope that folks were basically just following us along this quick last 7-8 minutes, just getting an idea and a flavor of how a tarot reading could look like. And normally it's about an hour, isn't it, to work with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are coming to the end of this episode already. I know it's great, but I just want to ask you, Juliette, if people are still not convinced that tarot is an amazing way of connecting with yourself and getting unblocked, what would you tell them?
Interestingly, if I have to be quite honest, if you're not convinced, like there is 1,000 tools out there in coaching, and it doesn't have to be your thing. So if you're not convinced and you don't want to try tarot, that might not be for you, and that's perfectly fine. That's the first thing I would say. Like even I'm working with clients in coaching, and some of them are not even using tarot. But I think the big key takeaway is, as we've seen with you just now, tarot is very much around de-automation. So de-automation in the sense that you're being prompted with something unexpected. This is not about you. This is not about me. This is about whatever came back up. So it's really a tool that puts away the ego, and it creates a space where you have no choice but your brain to be in the present and to create meaning making in the present, challenging the existing narrative that you have. And I think as a key takeaway, this is just something that you can practice anytime around you. So I would like to invite everyone just now to think about a question they might have. So just take a moment, think about a question you may have about your life, about your work. No, just take a time and look around you and focus on something that is catching your attention, something that is catching your eyes. And now think about what this thing might mean about your question. And just like that, you can see that you can trigger your brain, de-automate your brain. And that's really what fosters creativity, self-awareness, self-reflection. Thomas, I saw your eyes moving. Did you do the little exercise, and how did you feel about it?
I did. I'm here in my bedroom, but it's quite dark around me. There's a little fold, between the curtains where some light can still come out. And it's just right in front of me. And funnily, I was thinking for myself, there is this light, and this light is actually forcing through, and it's literally in front of me. Sometimes I feel we don't see this light. We just are focusing on things that don't work, that just give us almost a situation where we spiral down, and where potentially a lot of folks are at the moment, right? Feeling this exhausted feeling.
Yeah.
But actually, the light can be sometimes be just in front of us. We just need to open our eyes, and we just need to look at it. And that's what I saw with this little tiny kind of gap between these two curtains that didn't properly close. I know. It's, yeah. So it worked quite well.
I love that. Likewise, see, the brain is like very strong at creating meaning and so on, and finding, once you solicitate this side of your brain, then you start to see things from a different light, start to see things differently. Name of the podcast.
Seen differently. Juliette, thank you so much for being here. How can people find you online?
So you can find me on LinkedIn if you have any questions at all about what we talked. So Juliette Modolo. So Juliette, French way, not Shakespeare way, with E-T-T-E in the end. And Modolo, quite straightforward, M-O-D-O-L-O. And you can also visit my website, which is jmodolocoaching.com.
Amazing. I will, of course, put all this information and your bio into the episode notes for today, the show notes. For me at the moment, I have to say, Juliette, that was an amazing, eye-opening session. Thank you for the quick reading, very encouraging. And thank you for being a guest here on Seen Differently. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Thomas. It was amazing. Have a nice day.
Thank you.